Well, good afternoon, folks. I might not be afternoon for some of you yet, but we're getting close. My name's Kevin Darty. I'm the Illinois Agriculture in the Classroom State Contact. I serve as the president-elect of the National Agriculture in the Classroom organization, and I'm your host for this afternoon's elementary session of the National Agriculture in the Classroom virtual conference, sponsored by BASF, the CHS Foundation, and Corteva Agriscience. We're really glad you're here. Today, a couple of things. Right now, if you look in the Q&A, Joanne has put out there that she loves the format and is hoping that we'll do more of these. What I need you to do is when you get your evaluation, make sure you tell us about that. There are some specific questions about when you'd like to see it, what you'd like to see. Plus, I'd also highly encourage you to reach out to your state Ag in the Classroom program and see what's going on in your neck of the woods. Also, Olivia, she shared a Padlet that she's created about some of the stuff she's learned. Glad to see that going. Next up, though, we're here to join Susan Chapul, and she's the garden elective teacher in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and has been for a couple of years. She supports schools in developing gardens and gardening curriculum for all grades and content areas. As a teacher, she focuses on gardens, agriculture, culinary arts, careers, all related to areas of food and production. And she's going to talk about hydroponics made simple. So we are excited to learn a little bit more about hydroponics. Susan, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here today. One of the things that I can truly say is that I do have a love of gardening. And as you can see in the quote that I believe is showing on your screen, the love of gardening is a seed once sown that never dies. And I truly believe that. And part of what we do with our gardening program is we work with youth to get them interested and excited and engaged in gardening. So there's not a day goes by that I'm not in a garden somewhere across the Albuquerque, the APS district. Our district is one huge district. We have about 160 schools, and right now probably about 75 of them have gardens that are either being fully maintained or partially maintained. So we feel like that's a real success story for our district. But today we're going to talk about hydroponics. And so a couple things that I want to say, first of all, you know, the last speaker was from Florida, and I know Florida has been very hot and they have a lot of humidity. Albuquerque right now is about 98 degrees. We're headed for 100 today. We have about 15% humidity today. So coming from my background, and Kevin, I think you can appreciate this, I come from northern Iowa, so not too far away from Illinois. And I did spend my summers walking beans, and our farm that I lived on, we had about a 500-acre family farm. We grew soybeans, we grew corn. We had evergreen trees lining the road along the side yard of the farm. And for me, it turned out that I was allergic to corn pollen, severely allergic. So that's part of the reason that I'm down here in Albuquerque now and working in the Southwest. It really helps my allergies a lot. So I was on allergy shots from the time I was in second grade all the way till I was a sophomore in college. And I was like, I got to get out of here. I can't do this anymore. So moved to the Southwest and everything is fine here in our hot, dry climate. But speaking of hot, you know, we've had several days over 100 degrees over the past few weeks, and we're supposed to get there again today. But in the winter time, it can get below freezing. So I can identify with some of you from those cold climates. And it's really hard on some of those cold days for our students to go outside and work in the garden, although we do garden all year long. So we were looking for an alternative to that. And that's where hydroponics comes in. And we have a really close attachment to our New Mexico Ag in the Classroom director and her crew. And they've been able to help us so much with the hydroponics. So I want to take a few minutes and just sort of go through what we've done, how we've done it, how New Mexico Ag in the Classroom has helped us out with that. And then I would like to show you one of the activities that we do with the students that allows them to create a small tabletop hydroponic system. And they can take it home, they can leave it in the classroom, but either way, they have the opportunity to see how hydroponics works on a very personal level. So thank you. And if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A, and towards the end of the presentation, there will be some time where I'll answer some questions and show you a few things. So let's go ahead and get started. So one of the things that I want to talk about today is why hydroponics. And I'll get to that in just a moment, but we're also going to take a look at some of the advantages of hydroponics growing. We're going to talk about some of the topics that we cover related to hydroponics in the classroom and how we use hydroponics in our classroom. And then I'll show you how to make a mini hydroponic system. So at the school where I was working in APS, I'm now working for the district, but the school where I was working, we were lucky enough to have a room that's totally devoted to our indoor planting. We were able to set up our hydroponic systems there. We now have 2 functioning hydroponic systems, and we're looking to build more. But it's been a really great opportunity for these students. And again, the why of it, when we look at what's happening in our world, and if you've used Journey 2050 at all, they have a lovely tracker in there that talks about how the population is increasing while the amount of arable land that we have is actually decreasing. And one of the biggest problems in New Mexico is a lack of water. We have the Rio Grande, which sometimes has water, but most of the time does not. And so we need to talk to the kids a little bit and help them understand that we need some alternatives to growing out in the garden or out in the field. At the school where I have gardened at, we have a half-acre garden. 1/4 acre is for vegetables. The other half is a pollinator garden. But we also wanted to show them that we have to look for alternatives. And that's where the hydroponics comes in. So just to give you a little bit of an idea, if you've never been to New Mexico, what it looks like. And I'm talking specifically Albuquerque right now, but you know, the whole state is very different, but everybody in the state has difficulties with water and also with rocky land. So you can see we have our mountains here, which are just to the east of Albuquerque. And a lot of the land in the foothills area is kind of this dried up shrubbery. We do have some grazing there, but not a lot. You look down here, a lot of cactus, a lot of shrub, and some of it's pretty hilly. You can see that hill in the background. In the city, lots and lots of asphalt. I think some of you have probably heard right now how hot Phoenix is. What's that? Asphalt in those buildings and that concrete that traps the heat. We have some of those similar problems in Albuquerque, and we don't have a lot of the high buildings that Phoenix does, but we still are kind of what I would term a concrete jungle. And so we definitely have areas of heat islands and not a lot of green space. Instead, we have vacant lots that sort of look like this, and they just kind of become a litter trap and not visually appealing at all. But that's what a lot of Albuquerque is. The other thing that we have going right through the middle of Albuquerque is this beautiful, beautiful bosque and the Rio Grande River. We were really lucky this year because we had a lot of snowfall up north. So our river was very full throughout the spring, and now, having not had any water since, measurable water since March, it's going dry. But nonetheless, the water table is pretty high along here. So along the bosque, we have a lot of agriculture, which is awesome. And it is within the city limits. So that's really cool for the students to be able to see that. Where I taught at, it was totally inner city. We are about 8 miles away from the bosque. So our students don't get there. And it's an inner city area of Albuquerque. And so our students are not safe or don't feel safe going outside at the end of the school day, many of them spend a lot of their time inside. So we use the gardens and what we do to help them understand that, you know, being outside is healthy, that it helps with their social emotional learning, that it also gives them opportunities to try new things and engage in different ways. So part of the work that we do at APS is we do have an outdoor learning team with the goal of getting all students outside. And that's become really important in this community where sometimes the crime is high, and it is, many of our kids live in dangerous areas, and a lot of them are in apartments, and the space that they have to grow in is maybe a balcony. And so really important for our kids to understand where their food comes from. New Mexico is basically an agricultural state, but our kids are removed from that in the city. So we want to kind of go full circle and bring them back to that point where they understand where their food comes from, but they're also planning for the future, how to grow with limited land and limited water. So let's start with the advantages of hydroponics. One thing that I firmly believe is with a garden, you can teach standards in all content areas, whether you're inside or you're outside. Every content area is teachable in the garden. I'll go through some of that as we go through this presentation. But being able to grow in the classroom, when the students walk in for the first time and they see the hydroponics system growing, it's amazing, and it generates lots of questions. So it's a really good visual reminder of this for the students that growing is important and we believe in it. And so we do it both indoors and outdoors. What I really like about hydroponics is it is climate controlled. Our students are able to work in the hydroponics room, or our grow lab as we call it, on those days when it's really cold outside. And yes, we do get snow occasionally in Albuquerque, and we do have lots of days that are below freezing. So we do have very cold temperatures, not below zero, but very cold temperatures throughout the winter. With our plants that are in the hydroponics, what we found is the grow rate is very quick. And so our turnover time with crops happens very quickly. So the students are seeing everything from germinating the seeds through harvesting, and are able to explore everything in between. And we get some higher yields from our hydroponics system. We are able to grow more plants in less space, and we are conserving those important resources, especially our water, with the hydroponics. Behind me, you can see this is one of our hydroponics systems. And we started this at the late part of May, and only recently, after I'd been gone for a couple of weeks, I came back and saw that it was low on water, but we rarely have to add water to them. And so I think with the low humidity and the high temperatures, it's just been evaporating more quickly than it typically would. But we are able to conserve our resources. And for the students, it's a collaborative project. They're able to work in teams, and they do a lot of problem solving with the hydroponics system. So as we go through and talk about hydroponics, a couple of the things that we cover are the plant nutrients. We all know that plants need nutrients in order to grow. So we talk about the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the potassium, and we use little water beads to represent the different types of nutrients that the plants need. And I'll show you that in just a minute when we go to our tabletop hydroponics, so you can see how we use them. And the students can look at that ratio of nitrogen to phosphorus to potassium and can illustrate it in their tabletop hydroponics. So looking at plant nutrients, and for younger students, basically those macronutrients. If you are a middle school or high school teacher, you might want to talk about some of the micronutrients as well. We also talk about pH and tell the students that 5.5 to 6.5 is that pH sweet spot. that's where the plants are going to grow best. They're going to be able to absorb the most nutrients, and with that slightly acidic pH, we have less algae growing, and that's super important because algae does grow in hydroponic systems, but having it slightly acidic kind of slows that down. And we'll talk about some other ways to slow down algae growth as we go along. So talking about pH, and with our students, we've been able to use the pH test kits. We've been able to use pH paper. We did a cabbage juice indicator, and the students found it really fun to look at a variety of liquids, everything from soda to, window cleaner, to determine the pH of that. So it's really a good opportunity for students to explore pH, not only with the plants and the hydroponics, but also in their everyday world. So working with the pH has been a really great opportunity for the students, and we'll again talk about that a little bit later as we go through the tabletop hydroponics. So this is a system that started it for us, and you can see that system right behind me here. And it says, "Thank you, Ag in the Classroom." The New Mexico Ag in the Classroom has a grant every spring where they are providing a hydroponic system that looks like this, as well as a raised bed to put out in the garden with all of the irrigation, all of the equipment, everything you need to make this possible. So that's really a cool thing for us and the schools here at APS and around New Mexico. We were in one of the schools just down the street last week and giving out systems to some of the schools that had won the grant this year. So you can see we get the stand, we got the 2 tubs. So we're looking at deep water hydroponics. We get the pump that works with the system. So basically it's just a common aquarium pump, 2 attachments here, so that you have tubing going into both of the tubs, and then you just add an aerator to it, and that sets in the bottom. And so very simple, easily replaceable, low cost system that really works. And you can see it back here, all of the plants that we have growing. Like I said, we'll be harvesting these and turning this over with a new crop here shortly. We also had the students build another stand out of PVC, which was truly a great engineering project for them. And then they were able to put it together in same basic design, but it works really, really well. So at any given time, we have at least 1 system working, if not 2. And we'll be looking to add a 3rd one here this fall. So Ag in the Classroom has been amazing from that respect. And I just want to point out the light that's at the top of that system is just a shop light, 4 bulbs in it. And we run it for about 10 hours. It's on a timer, and it works really, really well. We have had that light with that system since 2020. So they last for a long time. So we got our system the year that everything was shut down for COVID. And so my partner who helps me out in the garden and I got that first crop going. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And basically what we did is we put some seeds in the little squares of rock wool that you see there, put it in some water in a plastic container with a lid on to sort of get that greenhouse effect going. And we set it under the light on top of the tubs. As you can see here, because we have 2 tubs, 6 holes in each tub, we had room for 12 plants. So we set up 12 plants, we labeled them, and we started them, as you can see there, on 10/24, October 24th. So it was really surprising to us how quickly they grew. They sprouted within the first couple of days, and then probably by the 4th day or so, they were ready to go into the hydroponic system. So you can see we use the little net pots that looks like something like this. And these cost about 35 cents. We've gotten several more of them besides the ones that Ag in the Classroom gave us. And we use these all the time. So you just drop that rock wool with the starter seed inside the net pot and cover it with these Hydroton clay pebbles that look like this. And if you cover the top of it, that will keep the light from getting in and hopefully reduce any algae growth that you have. So it doesn't take very long for these seeds to sprout, and then you can put them into the system. So you just set the neti pot into the top of the system where the holes are, and it's filled with water with a nutrient solution. And basically after that, we check the pH on a regular basis, and we look at the water on a regular basis. And pretty much after that, it takes care of itself. Now, the one behind me has overgrown. We should have harvested it long before we did, but you know, this we wanted to have set up so the students could see it when they came back to school in a week and a half. So yeah, we're starting school pretty early here this year. So change for everybody. So harvest day, and you can see the picture at the top looks very much like the one behind me looks. It was just kind of an overgrown mess. So we cut it back, harvested the leaves. In this case, we started out with greens, got a nice harvest, and we used this with, we made salads for our interns who were able to come into the garden during the pandemic and work with us. And so that was our first shot at growing in the hydroponics. And you can see this is sort of what it looked like after the kids and myself got done harvesting. Not very pretty, but our director of Ag in the Classroom said, this is what she likes to see when she looks at a hydroponic system, because it tells her we're following through, we're harvesting, and hopefully we're using the harvest and providing food for our school students and our families, which is exactly what we do. Not on a formal level. We're not allowed to, with APS, taking it to the cafeteria or anything like that, but we're working on that aspect of it too. So
real quick,
yes.
quick, I had a question about the system itself. If there is a specific lessons or a specific blueprint you followed, and can you only grow greens in a hydroponic system?
Okay, two excellent questions. The Ag in the Classroom literacy matrix has some lesson plans related to hydroponics and growing. We have some lesson plans that we've developed around our system, which, you know, I'd be happy to share with people if they're interested in that. And I'll show you my email later on and you can send it to me. We started out with greens, and then after we grew the greens and harvested them, I think we got 8 harvests off of this first crop, which was pretty amazing. We were just, you know, bowled over by how many times the plants came back and regrew. So it was really a cool lesson in, you know, how much produce do we get compared to what we get outside. Then after that, and I think it's on the next slide, whoops, nope. Oh, I might have forgot to put a slide in here. But after we got done growing the greens, then we decided we would put some herbs in there. And our herbs grew fantastic. And the reason we grew herbs is because we do work with a local community kitchen called Three Sisters Kitchen. And they came to our classroom. They showed the students how to harvest the herbs. They showed students how to dry them, how to crush them up and use them. And then we did some recipes using some of the herbs that we grew in the hydroponic system. So they created 4 basil recipes, I believe. They did a basil lemonade. They did a basil peanut butter spread. They did pesto. And there was one other thing, I can't remember exactly what it was, but using the hydroponics to grow the herbs was really a great opportunity for us to take it a step further and show the students, you know, how do we use these herbs and what are they good for? And can you use them in dishes? And what herb goes with what type of food? So yeah, you can grow more than just greens in the hydroponic system. After we finished with the herbs, then we thought, well, let's try some tomatoes and peppers. And so we did that next. And it was really cool to see when the peppers and the tomatoes started getting their little flowers. And we were like, yes, this is going to work. And they did produce fruit in the hydroponic system. We also wanted to see what would happen if we took a vegetable that we started in the hydroponics and then took it outside to the garden. You know, would it have some kind of shock that happens, or would it grow okay? And so we took out a couple tomatoes and a couple peppers. And by that point, the roots have grown down through the neti pot. So you literally have to cut it off. And we took those out to the garden, put them in the ground. And, you know, it was like it was planted there. There was no problem with those plants growing in the garden after they had started in the hydroponics. So that was kind of a cool experiment that, again, allowed the students to see, yeah, we can start something here and then take it outside. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. A couple people are looking for more step-by-step instructions, and I'm trying to find those on the matrix. So,
so there are two, and I can talk once I'm done with the slides. I can talk more specifically how we set this up.
Perfect. That's perfect. You keep going, and we'll keep coming back to it. Yep.
Okay. Perfect. Sounds good. So yeah, you can grow. I believe that the garden is a big experiment. So if the kids say, oh, let's try growing strawberries, yep, let's grow strawberries. If the kids say, let's grow, you know, this seed, we put it in and see what happens. So constantly practicing, playing around, trying new things, and just having fun with this entire system. In the curriculum matrix, I know there are two lessons. One's called test tube hydroponics, and the other one is called what no soil for elementary school kids. And those are two very specific step-by-step lesson plans that you can use. And again, like I said, I can talk more about step-by-step after we're done with the presentation, if that's okay. All right, so the first time we picked up the lids and we looked underneath and we saw the roots that were growing out of these neti pots, we were just shocked. We could not believe what we were seeing. And you can see on the left hand, I guess it'd be left hand, yeah, the big, huge roots coming out of some cilantro there. And the other side shows just a tangle of roots where they kind of merged together and just created this huge web underneath the lid of the hydroponics tubs that we had. So this is really cool to show the kids. They are just, their eyes get big. They're amazed when they see that. And they're just like, how does that happen? You know, so a really cool opportunity for kids to get engaged and excited about something that they're seeing. And so we always make it a point to lift that lid on a regular basis and show the kids what's happening underneath and in the water. So what are we doing? If you look, the picture on the left again, that was an herb garden that we started growing. So you can see we had everything from dill to cilantro to basil, and the harvest was tremendous. We got so much produce from that we were able to use, like I said, working with this kitchen to show us how to use those herbs. So that was really cool. And then the kids wanted to try, you know, oh, let's put some fish in there. So we got an aquarium. We have a plant floating on top, and we have our little fish down here in the bottom. And again, you know, that's more aquaponics, and this one is not a perfect system because we do feed the fish, and in a perfect system we shouldn't have to, but it's been successful, and the kids like to see that kind of thing. Then we put anything and everything in a jar, in a water bottle, whatever we have handy, and try to grow it hydroponically or with nutrient solutions. So we've got our tomato here. We used pool noodles. We just cut little strips out and put the plant in there, and away we went. And so these are doing really well right now and do well for the kids, so they can take that home and let their parents see what they're doing. We pulled the top off of a pineapple and put it in water. Eventually we took that pineapple out of the water, and right now it's probably tripled in size. So it's in a pot in our grow room right now. You can see the blooms from the pepper plant, and we got a really nice harvest off of the peppers and the tomatoes that we grew. We did the cherry tomatoes, so we did the very small ones. And then not true hydroponics, but one of the things we do closer to Christmas is we take the paper white bulbs and put them in a jar. We have rocks on the bottom. And this is fun for the kids because they grow so fast, and then they pretty much all bloom at the same time. And I'm not a big fan of the smell of it. And I have had teachers coming down the hallway and saying, "What's that smell?" But for the kids, it's fun for them to see that. And they keep a data sheet measuring, every day or every other day how much their paper white has grown. And so that's a lot of fun for them. And then they take them home at Christmas and do whatever with them. So fun activity for the kids. And then the tabletop hydroponics, the one I'm going to show you uses small little plastic cups, but we also took water bottles, just cut off the top and inverted it and put our plants in there to let them grow. So we try to do a lot of different things with our plants, and using the hydroponics in a variety of ways, not just in the systems that we have. And so our next step is we're going to do a vertical smart farm. We have a teacher in the district who built this one, and he's helped us get all of the, let me get back to where I was. He's got all of the materials listed and labeled, and he's going to help us build one for our school. And they literally have salad parties about every other week in school with the produce that they grow in their smart farm. So that's where we're going from here. All right, so let's talk about tabletop hydroponics. So you can see in this system, just very, very simple materials, just a plastic cup with a lid, a little bit of rock wool, a straw, and we usually put a wooden skewer in to measure the growth. So I'm gonna run through this because I see our time is flying by, and I want a little time for questions. But basically what we do is we lay out materials for the kids, and you'll get this in the recording, so you will have all of this information. I do want to talk just briefly about the water beads. I bought a bag of these water beads probably 3 years ago, and I still have all of this left. But these are really cool because I use one color to represent each of the different nutrients that the plant needs. So the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the potassium. And what's cool when they're setting in the water, you can see them here. They just kind of give sort of a haloed color. But this, if you can see it on the top here, is what they actually, look like. And I can't get a hold of it because it's wet. But this is what it looks like then after it's had a chance to set in the water for a while. And so this gives the kids opportunities to talk about what are those nutrients that a plant needs in order to grow, and how do we get those nutrients into a hydroponic system. We use peas, and sometimes we'll soak them ahead of time. Sometimes we'll just put them on as dry peas, and we see what happens. Some grow, some don't, but it's a fun experiment for the kids. I have used it with kids from elementary all the way up to high school, and all of them enjoy it. So with that said, oops, now what's going on? Okay, so we use rock wool. This comes in a big sheet, and all I do is pull it apart, and then I just take a knife, a serrated knife, and cut around it to make sure that it will fit into the lid of the hydroponic system. So you're going to soak that in water, and then with the lid, you're going to fold back those flaps in the center. to make room for the rock wool to go inside. And then I just take a regular hole punch a hole on each side of the lid so that I can put my straw in, so I can put my wooden dowel in to use as the students do their data collection. All right, so the plants need nutrients to grow, like I said. So we talked about the nitrogen, the phosphorus, potassium. I use basically a granular mixture that looks like this. I have a 10-5-14 mix, and this works pretty good for all of the plants that we use. So when the kids are setting up their system, I'll give them the right number of beads according to the proportion of each of the nutrients. So 10 of one color for the nitrogen, 5 of another for the phosphorus, and 14 of the other for the potassium. And then we add some water to the cup, we throw in the beads, and we talk again about these nutrients and why it's so important that if we're growing plants in water, why it has to be a nutrient solution. So we also talked about the fact that plants need space to grow. So our cup is providing that space. So we fit the rock wool into the center of the lid, put a couple peas on top, we snap the lid in place. Notice that the rock wool has to be touching the water because that's going to absorb the water and bring it up to the pea plant that's growing. And then we take a wooden dowel and we insert it into the cup. So you can see I have my students draw gradations on it based on, do I want to measure in inches or centimeters? And we use that to measure the plant as it begins to grow. And then we talk about the fact that plants need air. Even in a hydroponic system, if you have a fan on the plants, that helps them grow. So we have the students use a flexible straw and we just have them blow into the straw. And they love doing this. It's so crazy, but just blow into the straw 3 times just to give it some air. And we have them do that on a daily basis. We always remind them to take your mouth off the straw with each breath because they've got the nutrient solution in there. And so that's a fun thing for the kids to do. And they ask every day, when are we going to aerate our hydroponics? So, and then finally, we talked about the fact that plants need light. So we have 2 huge stands beside some windows that are probably about 20 feet tall. And we just put those hydroponic systems at the window. And so the students are able to see them on a daily basis and see what's happening as far as the growth goes, as far as the roots going down into the water. They can see when it needs more water added to it, they aerate it. And again, it's just a fun opportunity for students to experience hydroponics in a real low-tech, fun way. And so for daily care, we have them record and observe the plant growth on a daily basis. They aerate their plants every day with their 3 breaths. If the nutrient water if we need to add more nutrient water, we do that. And then as the plant is growing up, we just kind of wrap the leaves around the dowel. And so sometimes we'll let the students take them home and plant them. Sometimes we'll take them out into the garden and plant them depending on the time of the year. But again, a really fun activity for the students. They really enjoy it. And we give them just a simple data table to record the height and any observations, oh, my plant is drying up, what's wrong? So it gives them an opportunity to really look at the plant, make good scientific observations, and then start asking questions about what's going on. So if you want to write down my email address, please email me. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. I see we have a little bit of time yet for questions. So
we do, and we have a couple in the chat, and this is a really good one. What would you say the ideal grade to start hydroponics would be?
I feel like you can start it at any grade. I have worked with some preschool teachers, and they did a lot of the setup for this little tabletop system that I showed here. But when the kids were able to, put that lid on and work with see those little balls absorbing the water and we could talk to them a little bit about nutrients. You know, we didn't have to go into specifically the names or what ratio they have to be in or anything like that, but telling them just like we need our nutrition, so do the plants, and the kids have fun with it. Little kids, you know, you can help them with measuring. And we used sometimes bigger groups with the elementary kids, but we just poked more holes in the lids and put in a few more straws, so they all had their own color of straw that they blew in, and they thought that was really cool. We have probably about 10 elementary schools right now in the district using hydroponics, similar to the one behind me, or even sometimes a little more extravagant than that. So I would say at any point, you can start kids talking about and using hydroponics in the classroom.
Perfect. Before we get to the next question, you put your email up briefly, and people are panicked now. So they love hearing you talk, but they want your email back, Susan. So we'll
Okay.
take care of that. So that's going up there. They're talking about loving the tabletop system. I got a teacher who has no windows. Talk about your plant lights, and if you think that would work. And you've been in a classroom. Some of those overcoming some of those barriers of what hydroponics will allow you to do.
So the beauty of hydroponics, if you have that grow light like we have behind us here, that takes care of the whole issue of light. You don't need to have a window in your classroom if you have that. If you're doing like the tabletop hydroponics, maybe there's you know, a place in the school where you could set up a little table or stand to put those on where there might be some light coming in. And if not, you know, just having, even, you can get much smaller grow lights than the one that we have here, and just setting it up, you know, on a stand in your classroom. It's, don't be afraid to try things. That's all I can say is, you know.
Susan, I'm going to have you do one more thing. If you'd put that, you didn't hit share of your last slide, sorry. Because okay. I got you excited talking about the lights. I mean, if I got you talking about the garden, you're all about it. So there she is, guys. You rest easy. We've got it there. You love it when the passion shows through. Got another, they love the tabletop system. Independent science fair possibilities. Possible variables include plant type, nutrient mix, amount of light, endless possibilities. And I'm just thinking the light one for my teacher with no windows, you know, a couple little systems, even those test tube hydroponics, number of great science fairs. Talk a little bit more about not just the garden, but the science aspect, and maybe even a science fair, and getting kids encouraged into that.
Well, the thing about the garden, you know, we should call what we do a lab, because we talk to the students and we encourage them to ask questions. And then, you know, okay, how are we going to explore that question? What do you want to do? How can we look at, you know, does a real grow light with all of the different wavelengths work better, or does just the simple shop light work like we have behind us here? You know, which one works better for growing plant A, B, and C, or plant A, or whatever, however you want to think about that. We've done a lot of things with taste tests, like growing lettuce in the garden, growing lettuce in the hydroponics, and then we'll set up a little table in the cafeteria, and students will come by and they'll munch on one and they'll munch on the other, and they'll pick their favorite. And so we collect data frequently in that way. And it can be anything from the peppers that we grow indoors and outdoors, and the tomatoes. We also sometimes, like the basil lemonade that we made, that was so simple for the kids to take it down to the cafeteria and give kids samples, and, you know, yes, I like it, no, I didn't like it, and talk about why they did or did not like it. So we do like using a lot of the food aspect and how we use the produce that we grow when we're trying to get kids to investigate and trying to get them to eat healthier. You know, if we discover, oh my gosh, all these kids like, you know, what do I want to say? Cherry tomatoes or something like that. Okay, let's see if we can have find a recipe that we can, you know, create and take to the cafeteria and let the students taste it. So that's really a fun part of it for our students. They love that. They love being the center of attention and having that opportunity. We don't do science fairs here. In some ways, I wish we did, but we do a lot of presentations. Our students have from time to time presented to our board or invited some of the administration from other schools to come and see what they're doing. And the garden is a big experiment, and you can't do anything wrong. You just figure out what you got to change and figure out how to do it better the next time. And that's what we tell the kids. So we don't panic over anything that fails. We just try it differently the next time. I don't know if that answered the question.
That was a great answer. That was a great answer. I had a question about the nutrient mix that you purchased. Mm-hmm. Was it specific for hydroponics, or was it just a simple nutrient mix?
Yeah, this one is specific for hydroponics. So you can see at the top it says general hydroponics. Any nutrients that you can get the liquid kind, which frequently has a pH buffer. So if pH is something you're worried about, that works really, really well. And it takes just a tiny, tiny amount. Like when I'm doing these tabletop hydroponics, I just, like you would get a pinch of salt. That's all I put in the water. And that's all they need. So this will last me probably for about 3 or 4 years, depending on how much I use it and how often I do this activity with schools right now across the district. We got a liquid bottle of fertilizer when we first got our hydroponic system from Ag in the Classroom. So that, remember, was 2020. And we just now finished the last bit of that bottle up. So we've been using the liquid in these systems that we have in the classroom. And then the hydroponics, the tabletops, we've been using the granular.
Well, Susan, Albuquerque is, first off, lucky to have a garden resource teacher, and even luckier to have you as their garden resource teacher. Thank you so much for joining us. Lots of people echoing their thanks for a wonderful presentation. We really appreciate it. And I do have to come clean. I had to answer a question early on and explain exactly what walking beans was. So thank you for taking me back down that memory trail. But some people didn't know what that was. And oftentimes kids don't get to do that now.
Beans? I don't even know.
So, well, thank you again. And to the rest of you, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you joining us and listening to learn more about hydroponics made simple. Make sure you contact Susan. That's awesome. We will get started at the top of the hour with our next session, which is on ag badging. I'm really looking forward to this one. Join us again at the top of the hour. And again, thank you, Susan. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.